Hello, we are back with the Warm Line 2.0, a 5-week series this summer where we're engaging relevant topics for this time and place. And on this show, particularly from faith perspectives and with a spiritual lens. I'm Jen Rood. I'm the university pastor at Pacific Lutheran University. And today we're going to be talking about living your values. And I'm super delighted to welcome two guests today. Melannie Denise Cunningham, who's the Director of Multicultural Engagement and my colleague in campus ministry, and Sergia Hay, who's a Professor of Philosophy at PLU and also the Director of the Wild Hope Center for Vocation. So welcome to Melannie and Sergia.
Thank you, Pastor Jen.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I asked Melannie and Sergia to come and talk with me today, as I think that you both are people who live your values with integrity, with clarity and with focus and with dedication. And I just thought you'd be two great people to have this conversation with. And this conversation about living your values seems particularly important, right, in this time and place as we think about that we're in the midst of the pandemic, ongoing systemic racism continues, and we've got an upcoming election this fall. So lots of things that are sort of the backdrop for this conversation. So to just start us off, I wanted to kind of ask each of you, what's a core value that you hold that's been particularly relevant for you in this moment in time? And maybe how that value is connected with your faith. Either of you can start off.
Isn't that something, Sergia?
Go ahead, Miss Melannie.
That's the great, Jen, you're just going to go deep right away.
Right,
Okay.
We're going right in.
Oh, well, I have a few values that filter my being. And I would say, though, that respect is probably at the depth of my core. And that would be respect for myself first, and then respect for others. And without saying respect for God, of course. And with that, I'm guided, by everything. Love, of course, but respect, that gives me that entrance into conversation, entrance into relationship. I do need to sprinkle humility on top of that, though, because it has a lot to do with me never seeing myself as being better than anyone. Just we're all God's children, and so I come always with that understanding in my heart. And then if I don't respect and love myself, I'm not able to give respect and love to others. So that would be my choice.
Thank you for that. I love that, the sprinkling too. A deep value with some sprinkles. How about you, Sergia?
So I've been thinking a lot about courage and gentleness and about how they might intersect. But I would say that the most important thing that I think most constantly about is integrity. And by that, I mean wholeness and about staying focused on doing the right thing and always doing it with love. But I have to just say, I really appreciate what Melannie said about humility, because I think that that's the important starting point for anything to take place, is recognizing. So as a Lutheran, I recognize my flawed and fallible nature and use that as a starting point for all of my thinking about what I should do. Is constantly being reflective about whether or not it's the right thing and whether it's about serving me or about serving other people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. We talk about at PLU that we are like a values saturated place. We're not a values neutral institution. We have an educational mission. We have values for our community. And the PLU mission statement to seek to educate students for lives of thoughtful inquiry, service, leadership, and care for other people and for their communities and for the earth. And those, folks who are connected with PLU, we're also hoping some incoming students are watching this. We all know the mission statement because it just is so embedded in our culture, we can all recite it. So I'm wondering from each of you, is there part of the PLU mission that either personally or professionally most resonates with you and your own values?
I've been spending some time thinking about, I would say in the last couple of years, I always thought that the thoughtful parts of our mission went with inquiry, but I've seen it written in other ways where the thoughtful applies to all of it. So
Ooh, I love that.
and thoughtful service and thoughtful care. And I've been recently thinking about how fired up I am for teaching right now, because I think that thoughtful component is really what we're seeking and is what is so needed in the world. We need thoughtful scientists, doctors, managers, public policy workers, social justice advocates and fighters. We need all of those people to be able to do it in a thoughtful, rather than simply reactionary way. Yeah. So,
I love that, Sergia. I have not heard people talk about thoughtful kind of connecting with all of those values.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love
thank
that
you.
so much too, Sergia. And I'm going to say, Pastor Jen, what Sergia said, and then, and then I'm just going to stick with care. You know, that is, for me, the most delicious part of PLU's mission statement is care. And sometimes we fall short. And I like the idea that when we do fall short, that we recognize and we keep going. And I say that from the lens of being a person of color, you know, at a predominantly white institution, and servicing students of color. So we have to be really real about that. But it's the care for ourselves, the care for the earth. I love how we are very, very mindful about that care for our community. And so when we care, then we come in a humble state of mind and get ourselves out of the way, so that let me put it this way, we have to learn how to care for people the way that they want to be cared for. And that means we have to pay attention to the whole person.
I think what's so interesting is when I hear you both talk, I hear myself in my own mind saying, like, yes, that's exactly how I see both of you. Like, Sergia, your deep thoughtfulness in all of those areas, and Melannie, your deep care. And I think there's something about, like, you both, who you are inside and who you are outside lines up really well in my perspective. And I think that is just like such a beautiful way to exemplify this, like, living your values. And so I wonder, like, clearly you both have practiced that. Like, that is a hard thing to do. And so I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how you practice or work or intentionally kind of cultivate embodying your values in action. So how do you do that?
you go first, Melannie.
Help the rest of us out.
See, Sergia.
She did that. Yep.
Okay, you get the hard
That
questions
was
first.
good, girl. Can you say that again, Pastor Jen?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how do you embody your values? I mean, people hold a lot of values, but it's sometimes hard to, like, put those into action. And you both seem to have found a way to really live your values. So I'm just wondering, like, can you give the rest of us some tips?
Yeah, I just live. I mean, my steps are ordered by the Lord. I totally believe that. So when I'm up, you know this, I fast, I pray, I listen to God. If I have conflict or struggles, I've got to be still so that I can hear what God has to say to me. And then I'm really clear about what I value. Like you said, I said respect. You asked me to pick one, but I value justice. I value accountability. I value service. And so with an understanding in my mind and a clear picture of what I value, then I live what I value. I don't even think about it. It's just a filter. If I'm feeling unsettled in my spirit, then I got to sit down and think about it and ask God for direction, and then I move. So that's how I've learned over the years, in my 62 seasoned years of life, to just be still and wait for direction, and then you don't get scattered.
I love that. Yeah, because we can just chase after a million things, but to really get centered and grounded and to hear where we're supposed to go next. Ooh, I love that. Thank you. How about you, Sergia?
I, as always, agree with Melannie. So I would say for me, prayer and reflection are really important parts of my day. I was in a conference call yesterday, Zooming with some other philosophers, and the word kenosis came up, which is Greek word for self-emptying. And so I've been thinking a lot about that since then. It's a really interesting theological concept, but about this emptying out of the self to make room for something else to take place. And I really do think that that takes silence, and I think that takes stillness. So creating space for that to happen, I think, is really big.
That connects back to the thoughtful piece too, the silence and stillness to be thoughtful. Yeah. Melannie, did you want to add something?
I would just say I'm living it right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I am here in a monastery
I love
in
it.
solitude because this pandemic and this racism and all of this that is all to the front has got me so twisted. I don't know what to do. So all I do is just have to find an extreme measure to just sit down, be still, and hear God. So I've taken some drastic measures to do that because there's an emergency going on in this world, and we need soldiers. We need folks to jump in their calling. If not now, when? So yeah, I'm literally, viewers, living this out right now. I'm so still.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that beautiful place too. That is not a virtual background, friends. That is your actual location. So
Yes.
Melannie and I have the joy to work together to put together chapel for a semester. We have chapel through the PLU community on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And the theme that's kind of been speaking to us over the summer that we have claimed for the fall is love your neighbor, a call to action. So this idea of the value of love, which is run through many different spiritual traditions, including Christianity, but really activating that love, right? That it's not just a passive, like, I love you from afar, but how are we activated in that? So I'm wondering from each of you, is there an action that you feel called to in this moment in response to this value of loving neighbor? How would you each think about, like, how are you loving your neighbor in an active way right now? Or feeling called to?
So I'm thinking about daily kindnesses. So very small gestures, right? And then also larger scale things that are about turning systems. So supporting Black-owned businesses, thinking about how to contribute to food banks and be involved in the work having to do with food justice. And so, but I'm also thinking about it in terms of my work and my profession, and about developing even deeper wells of compassion for my students, and being prepared for what the fall will look like. I think that's also another form of that activated love. And I think it's a really important point to say, you know, it would be nice if we could say love would solve all of the issues that we're facing right now. And I actually have a hopeful, optimistic view that it will, but it can't if it's just a feeling. If
Right.
it's just a warm, fuzzy feeling, it has to be activated, as you said. And so we have to be thoughtful about how we can activate that in ways that are meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Sergia, thanks. That's beautiful. Well, that was a tough question, Pastor Jen, and I'm just going to be straight with it. Right now with my neighbor, I'm practicing tough love. And that at this point is the season, especially how it impacts my life as a Black woman and the structural racism and even racists that come through my life. maybe before I would practice diplomacy and really caring about what people think and their feelings. But right now I've reached a point, and I've drawn a line in the sand, that I also value accountability. You heard me say that. And so this is the season right now that Melannie is speaking her truth. And if that hurts your feelings, then you probably need to manage that, because
Yeah.
right now what's going on, I really have no patience for anything other than let's get it done. Let's live like how God said we're supposed to as neighbors. And some people have in their minds that they want to do it a different way. And while that has been acceptable, maybe for others in the past, personally, it is just not acceptable for me anymore. So I'm practicing tough love, and how would I say? Tough love is still love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tough love is still love. So I love you, and I'm just going to check you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love
Period.
with accountability is still love, right? Love with expectations. Yeah. You both kind of talked about this moment, and Sergia, you talked about kind of preparing for the fall. We hope that some of the folks who are watching are incoming students or staff or faculty or other folks who are kind of connected with the university. So what wisdom, because I know you are both very wise women, what wisdom would you offer that community as they're thinking about getting ready for fall in terms of this idea of living your values kind of day to day? Maybe think about this, particularly incoming students. They're new to college, probably overwhelmed. How can they practice sort of living their values and being who they are and called to be?
I'm gonna say just walk in your faith. Like, first of all, walk in your faith, because maybe viewers don't know, I spent 10 years in the admission office at PLU. And so I know that when we were talking about finding your purpose, finding your vocation, that you have to be prepared to change, be open to change. You're coming with all of this that up until now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying just come with a sense of excitement and openness, because this is the beginning of change for
Mm-hmm.
you. And so I think if you're open and not rigid about everything, and you're bringing what your mama and daddy and cousins and everybody said they want you to do, they're sending you off, and then you get there and you figure out, okay, maybe I did want to be a nurse and now I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I wanted to, or maybe I was believing and now I've changed. Be open for all of that, because your best is yet to come.
I think that really also is about staff and faculty, that we come with an openness each time. Like, that's part of, I think, what a lot of us love about being at a university, is that we continue to grow and change and learn from and with students. So yeah, that openness, I love that. Sergia, what would you add to that?
So, college is an amazing time of new independence. And it's really when people begin to forge themselves. And I think the same is true even for adult learners who are entering in, is that it's a time, as Melannie said, for change. And so it's worthwhile to spend some time in reflection, thinking about who is it that you want to be, right? Not just who you are, but
Yeah.
who is it that you want to be? What kind of agent of change do you want to be in the world? And start thinking of those kinds of things about the kind of legacy that you want to leave behind you, and what kind of life you think you should have. Those kinds of thoughts, I think, are really helpful at the beginning. They can be scary, because so much can happen and so much can change, and this time is really requiring a lot from us. It's a crisis time. All the more reason to be ready and to be thoughtful in the process.
And Pastor Jen, if you allow me, there's one more word I'd like to say for faculty and staff. Vulnerable, vulnerability. I mean, everything right now is so new for us and so different and so disruptive in many ways. And maybe we're used to having control over everything, control of our classroom. Now we have to teach differently, control of our programs. Now we have to do it differently. And so it really is okay to say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm just going to have faith. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to, but that vulnerability has to be there to allow the newness to come.
Thank you for that. This was so great. I so appreciate you both as colleagues and friends and as mentors, really. And I'm so thankful that we could have this conversation that will enrich others, but has certainly enriched me. So thank you both, and be well.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, you got to know, Pastor Jen, that you are a blessing to us. We're not going to let you just get away with that. You are a blessing to us, and we love you dearly.
Love you guys.
And I am like the most grateful that you are my colleague in the same office when we can be in person. God bless.
I know, I miss you guys.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.